My daughter returned after 3 years studying abroad and found me sitting in complete darkness. Dad, why is there no food anywhere? Your pension is $3,800 a month. Suddenly my daughter-in-law appeared with a smug smile and coldly declared, I decide how every penny gets spent. My daughter slowly removed her earrings and did something that left everyone speechless. But what I'm about to tell you, what really happened in this house, is far more twisted than anyone could imagine. Before I reveal what happened next in that cold, dark house, please comment below and tell me where you're tuning in from today. My name is Holden Sinclair. I'm 72 years old and I live in Portland, Oregon. My wife passed away 5 years ago, leaving me with 2 children, Selah, who went to study abroad in Europe 3 years ago, and Tristan, who married Arabella 2 years back. I receive a monthly pension of $3,800 for my 30 years of work, and during Selah's absence, Tristan and Arabella had been taking care of me. I wasn't expecting her that Tuesday afternoon in February. The doorbell rang twice sharp and insistent, cutting through the silence of my cold house. I pulled the thin blanket tighter around my shoulders as I shuffled to the front door, my slippers barely making a sound on the hardwood floor. Dad! Selah's voice cracked as she took in my appearance. I watched her eyes widen, traveling from my gaunt face down to my clothes hanging loose on my shrinking frame. The shock in her expression told me everything I'd been trying to ignore for months. She pushed past me into the living room, her suitcase forgotten on the porch. Dad, why is it so dark in here and cold? Her breath formed small clouds as she spoke, and I realized she was right. The house felt like a tomb. The thermostat, I mumbled, gesturing weakly toward the hallway. It's been acting up. But Selah was already moving toward the kitchen, her footsteps quick and determined. I heard the refrigerator door open, followed by a sharp intake of breath that made my stomach clench with shame. Dad. Her voice was hollow when she returned, holding up an empty milk carton and 3 packets of ketchup. Where is your food? I opened my mouth to give her the excuse I'd been practicing for months. Something about not being very hungry lately, about preferring lighter meals. But the words died in my throat when I saw the thermostat reading she was staring at 52 degrees. Dad, where's your food? Your pension is $3,800 a month. Her voice rose with each word, a mixture of confusion and growing anger. That's when I heard the familiar click of heels on hardwood, and my heart sank. Arabella appeared in the kitchen doorway, perfectly dressed, and wearing that smile I'd grown to fear, the smile that never reached her eyes. Is there a problem? She asked, her voice syrupy sweet, as she looked from Selah to me, then back to Selah. Yes, there's a problem, Selah said, her voice steady despite the fire in her eyes. Why is my father starving? Arabella leaned against the doorframe like she had all the time in the world. Well, someone has to manage that money responsibly. Your father would just waste it if we let him have access to it. Besides, she paused, that cold smile spreading wider, I control every single dollar he receives. The words hung in the air like poison. I watched my daughter's face go completely blank, and I'd seen that expression only once before, when she was 12, and Tommy Richardson had pushed her little brother off the playground swing. She'd walked up to Tommy with that same empty calm and broken his nose. Slowly, deliberately, Selah reached up and removed her earrings, placing them carefully on the kitchen counter. The small action sent ice through my veins. She grabbed my arm gently but firmly. Dad, we're going to the hospital. Right now. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in the emergency room at St. Mary's Hospital. The fluorescent lights felt harsh against my eyes as a nurse approached with her clipboard. What brings you in today? My father has severe weight loss and appears malnourished, Selah said steadily. I've been abroad for 3 years and just found him like this. The nurse's expression shifted as she studied my hollow cheeks and hanging clothes. How much weight has he lost? He used to weigh 165, maybe 120 now. Within minutes, I was on an examination table facing Dr. Augustus Kane, a man with kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard. When he placed me on the scale, the numbers glowed red, 118 pounds. Selah gasped from the corner. When did you last weigh 165? He asked. Over a year ago. His examination was thorough, but gentle. Blood pressure, heart rate, skin condition. His expression grew more serious with each test. We need comprehensive blood work and imaging, he said quietly. 2 hours later, he returned with results that made Selah sink into her chair. Your father is suffering from severe malnutrition. His vitamin D is almost non-existent. B12, critically low. His protein levels show his body has been consuming muscle tissue to survive. He looked directly at Sella. This is prolonged nutritional deprivation. That's when Theodora Ashford knocked. The hospital social worker was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and experienced eyes. I've reviewed your father's case. This fits the pattern of elder financial abuse and neglect. I'm required to document this and file with Adult Protective Services. She asked detailed questions while photographing my condition each click, preserving evidence of systematic neglect. The medical documentation is crucial, she explained to Sella. These records photographs test results. They paint a clear picture. The weight of it all pressed down on me. 47 pounds lost over more than a year. Critical vitamin deficiencies. My body eating itself to survive. The clinical terms made it real in a way I'd been avoiding. How long? I whispered to Dr. Kane. At this rate of decline, without intervention, maybe 6 months before organ failure? Sella's hand found mine squeezing tight. 6 months. Arabella's timeline was becoming clear. We need to get you stabilized, Dr. Kane continued. IV fluids, vitamin injections, nutritional supplements. But this level of neglect? He shook his head. Someone was controlling your access to food. Theodora finished her documentation with practiced efficiency. I've seen cases like this before. The pattern is always the same. Isolation, financial control, gradual starvation. Your daughter arriving when she did likely saved your life. The fluorescent lights suddenly felt less harsh, more like hope cutting through darkness. For the first time in months, people were listening. People were documenting. People were believing what I'd been too ashamed to say out loud. What happens now? Sella asked. Now we build a case, Theodora replied. Medical evidence, financial records, witness statements. Everything we need to stop this from happening to anyone else. Dr. Kane handed Sella a thick folder of medical records. You'll need these, he said quietly, for the lawyers. The next morning, my daughter had already found attorney Lysander Gray. Lysander Gray's office smelled of leather and old books, the kind of place where serious conversations happen behind closed doors. Diplomas lined the mahogany-paneled walls, and afternoon sunlight filtered through heavy curtains, casting long shadows across his massive desk. Elder abuse cases are unfortunately common, he said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses as he reviewed the medical records Sella had spread before him. But this level of systematic neglect, he shook his head grimly, this is attempted murder. The words hit me like a physical blow. Murder. I'd been thinking of it as Arabella being difficult, maybe taking advantage. But hearing it named for what it truly was made something shift inside my chest. What we need now is financial documentation, Lysander continued, opening a legal pad. Bank statements, pension records, any paperwork showing who has access to your accounts. Salah pulled out her laptop. I started gathering information this morning. Dad's pension goes directly to his checking account at Pacific Northwest Bank. Within an hour, we were sitting across from a bank manager named Patricia, who pulled up my account history on her computer screen. The color drained from her face as she scrolled through the transactions. Mr. Sinclair, are you aware that $2,800 is withdrawn from your account every month? $2,800. I felt dizzy, but my pension is $3,800. Yes, sir, which leaves you with $1,000 monthly for all living expenses. Patricia's fingers clicked rapidly across her keyboard. This pattern goes back 36 months. Sela leaned forward, her voice tight. Show us where that money went. The screen filled with transaction details. Nordstrom, $800. Neiman Marcus, $1,200. A travel agency charge for $4,500, labeled Bahamas Getaway. Restaurant charges at Portland's most expensive establishments, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. $1,000, I whispered, staring at the screen. To live on, rent, utilities, food, medication, Lysander said, making notes. Impossible in today's economy, especially for someone with health issues. Patricia continued scrolling. There's also this. She pointed to a recurring monthly charge of $420 to Mutual Life Insurance Company. I don't have life insurance, I said. Someone does, Lysander replied darkly. We spent 2 hours documenting everything. 36 months of systematic theft. Luxury purchases while I rationed crackers. Vacation packages while I wore 3 sweaters indoors. The mathematics were brutal. Approximately $100,000 stolen over 3 years. We need to set up a new account immediately, Lysander advised. One that only you control, Mr. Sinclair. We'll redirect a portion of your pension there while we build the case. At a different bank across town, I signed papers with shaking hands. For the first time in years, I would have access to my own money. The bank officer, a kind woman named Sarah Martinez, helped me set up online access. Your daughter can help you monitor this, she said gently, but only you have signature authority. As we left the bank, Salah's phone buzzed with a text from Lysander. Found something disturbing in the insurance records. Need forensic accountant ASAP. Back in his office, Lysander was pacing. This isn't just theft, it's a comprehensive financial abuse scheme. The insurance policy, the systematic draining of assets, the timing. He stopped pacing and looked directly at me. We need a forensic accountant, Lysander said, reaching for his phone. 3 days later, when Penelope Ravencroft called us back, her voice was trembling. Mr. Sinclair, Penelope said over the phone, you need to sit down for this. I was already sitting in Lysander's office, but something in her tone made me grip the armrests of my chair tighter. Salah moved closer, her face tense with anticipation. I've traced every transaction over the past 3 years. Penelope continued, her voice steady despite its earlier tremor. The luxury spending is extensive. A $4,000 Hermes handbag purchased last Christmas. A $12,000 vacation package to the Bahamas in March. Designer shoes, jewelry, spa treatments. All charged to accounts linked to your pension. Selah's jaw clenched, while my father was rationing crackers. It gets worse, Penelope said. I also performed computer forensics on your home system, Mr. Sinclair. With your permission, of course, as documented in the legal papers you signed. I nodded, though she couldn't see me through the phone. What did you find? Search histories, extensive ones, all traced to your daughter-in-law's user profile. There was a pause, and I could hear papers rustling. The earliest searches date back 24 months right after she married your son. My stomach dropped. What kind of searches? Average life expectancy, 72-year-old male. That was her first query, then factors affecting elderly mortality rates. How long does malnutrition take to cause death in seniors? Oregon inheritance laws surviving spouse versus children. The room felt like it was spinning. Selah's hand found mine, squeezing so tight it almost hurt. There's more, Penelope continued relentlessly. Natural causes of death, elderly men. How to avoid suspicion, elderly death. Inheritance distribution, timeline, Oregon. Signs of starvation versus natural decline. Jesus Christ, Lysander whispered. The search frequency increased dramatically starting 6 months ago. Accelerating weight loss, elderly. Vitamin deficiency, death timeline. When to expect inheritance after elderly death. The most recent search was 3 days before your daughter's return. How long before body, discovered elderly living alone. I couldn't breathe. The office walls seemed to be closing in around me. Arabella hadn't just been stealing my money. She'd been researching how to kill me. She was planning this, Salah said, her voice hollow with shock. She was literally waiting for you to die. The pattern is clear, Penelope explained. Financial isolation first, then nutritional deprivation, while simultaneously researching inheritance laws and death timelines. This wasn't neglect, Mr. Sinclair. This was premeditated. Lysander was scribbling notes furiously. Can you document all of this? Screenshots, timestamps, everything? Already done. I've also cross-referenced the search dates with your bank withdrawals, Mr. Sinclair. The luxury purchases increased in direct correlation with the mortality research. The more she learned about killing you, the more of your money she spent. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. How long did she think it would take? Based on her research queries, she was expecting you to die within 6 to 8 months of reaching your current weight. Her searches about body discovery timelines suggest she was planning to claim she hadn't heard from you in several days when she eventually found you. The silence in the office was deafening. 3 people processing the reality that someone had been methodically planning my murder while living in my house, eating food bought with my money, smiling at family dinners. There's one more thing, Penelope said quietly. I found deleted emails between her and someone at Mutual Life Insurance discussing policy payouts and required waiting periods after death. The search history made my blood run cold, but what Lysander discovered the following week was even more terrifying. He called us into his office with an expression I'd never seen before. And I found something, Lysander said, sliding a document across his desk. And it changes everything. The paper felt heavy in my hands. Mutual Life Insurance Company, term life insurance policy. My name is the insured party. Coverage amount, $750,000. I don't have life insurance, I whispered. You do now, Lysander replied grimly. Someone took one out on you. Selah read over my shoulder. Beneficiary Arabella Marie Sinclair, primary and sole. Her voice turned ice cold. When was this issued? 18 months ago. Look at the signature. He placed a magnifying glass over my supposed signature. Even I could see it was wrong. The letters were too angular, too practiced, but imperfect. Forgery, I said, hands shaking. Professional forgery, but forgery nonetheless. I've sent copies to a handwriting expert. Selah was calculating in her head. 18 months ago. Dad, when did you start losing weight? I thought back to when food became scarce. Around then, maybe a little before. She took out life insurance and then started starving you, Selah said flatly. This was a murder plot. Lysander nodded. The timeline is damning. Policy issued September 2 years ago. Your health decline began that winter. She was creating conditions for your death while ensuring she'd profit. $750,000. She'd been planning to collect it by killing me slowly. The monthly premium is $420. Lysander continued, automatically deducted from your account. She used your money to pay for the policy that would pay out when you died. How is that legal? Selah demanded. It's not. Insurance fraud, forgery, elder abuse, attempted murder, multiple felonies. I've contacted the district attorney and the insurance fraud division. The room felt surreal. Someone had forged my signature, stolen my money, researched my death, and bought insurance betting on my demise. All while living in my house, calling me Dad. There's more, Lysander said quietly. Penelope found correspondence between Arabella and the insurance company about beneficiary claims. She was asking about required documentation payout timelines, whether autopsy would be required for someone your age. She planned every detail, I said, feeling numb, right down to funeral arrangements. We found searches for cremation costs Oregon and estate settlement timeline. She wasn't just waiting for you to die, Mr. Sinclair. She was orchestrating it. Selah stood abruptly pacing to the window. When she turned back, her face showed the determination I remembered from her childhood. The same look when facing playground bullies. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial theft computer searches about my death, forged insurance documents, systematic starvation. Arabella hadn't just been stealing from me. She'd been methodically planning my murder, while using my own money to fund both her lifestyle and the insurance policy that would make her rich when I died. The premium payments proved premeditation, Lysander explained. Every month for 18 months she paid $420 of your money, betting you'd die soon enough to make it profitable. I stared at the forged signature again, my name written in someone else's hand, signing away my life. We have everything we need, Selah said, her voice steady as steel. It's time to confront them. She arranged the meeting for the following Saturday morning at her apartment. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. Selah had prepared everything carefully. Her dining table was covered with documents, medical records, bank statements, insurance policies, computer printouts. She'd arranged them like evidence in a courtroom, each piece of paper telling part of the story of my systematic destruction. They'll be here in 10 minutes, she said, checking her watch. Dad, are you ready for this? I wasn't sure anyone could be ready to confront their own attempted murder, but I nodded anyway. My hands were steadier than they'd been in months. Having the truth documented, having people believe me, had given me strength I'd forgotten I possessed. The knock came at exactly 10 o'clock. Selah opened the door to reveal Tristan and Arabella, both dressed as if attending a business meeting rather than a family intervention. What's this about? Arabella demanded, sweeping into the apartment with her usual confidence. Your dramatic phone call was rather vague. Sit down, Selah said simply. Arabella remained standing, arms crossed. I don't appreciate being summoned like... Sit down. Selah's voice carried an authority that made even Arabella comply. Tristan took the chair beside his wife, looking uncomfortable. Selah, if this is about Dad's care, we can discuss... This is about attempted murder, Selah interrupted. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Arabella's face went pale, then flushed red with indignation. That's ridiculous, she sputtered. How dare you accuse... Selah placed the first document in front of them. Dad's medical records from last week. Severe malnutrition. 47 pounds lost. The doctor said 6 more months and he'd be dead. That's not our fault if he won't eat properly. The bank statements came next. $100,000 stolen over 3 years. Designer handbags, luxury vacations, expensive restaurants, all while Dad was eating crackers and rice. Arabella's eyes darted between the papers, her confidence cracking. I managed his money responsibly. This is your search history. Salah's voice was deadly calm as she displayed the computer printouts. Average life expectancy, 72-year-old male. How long does starvation take, elderly? Oregon inheritance laws. Tristan leaned forward reading the searches. His face went ashen. Arabella, what is this? It's manipulation, Arabella shot back. She's twisting innocent research. And this, Salah continued relentlessly, is a life insurance policy for $750,000, taken out on Dad's life 18 months ago, with a forged signature. You're the sole beneficiary. The silence was deafening. Tristan stared at the insurance policy, his hands shaking as he read his father's forged signature, his wife's name as beneficiary. You were planning to kill him, he whispered. That's insane. Arabella stood up abruptly. You can't prove any of this means. We can prove all of it, Scylla said. Forensic accountants, handwriting experts, computer specialists, medical professionals. We have 18 months of evidence showing systematic financial abuse, nutritional deprivation, and premeditated murder planning. Tristan looked at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. Oh my God, he said slowly. Oh my God, what have we done? Arabella turned on him. You didn't know anything about... She stopped, realizing she'd just admitted guilt. You have 24 hours, Sela said quietly. Confess to the district attorney, return the stolen money, and cooperate fully. Or face criminal prosecution for attempted murder, insurance fraud, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. Arabella's mask finally slipped completely. You little bitch, she snarled. You think you can just waltz back here after 3 years and... I'm saving my father's life, Sela replied calmly. Something you should have been doing. Arabella stormed toward the door, then turned back with venom in her eyes. You'll never prove intent. You'll never make this stick. My lawyer will tear this apart. Your lawyer will advise you to take the plea deal, Sela said, because attempted murder carries 25 to life in Oregon. Arabella stormed out screaming threats about lawyers. 6 months later, I sat in the Multnomah County Courthouse, watching my daughter-in-law face the consequences of her actions. The courtroom was smaller than I had expected, but the weight of justice felt enormous. Oak-paneled walls rose toward a high ceiling, and morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the gallery. I sat in the front row behind the prosecution table, Salah beside me, both of us watching as Arabella entered with her defense attorney. She looked different, thinner, paler, her usual designer clothes replaced by a simple gray suit. Her lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Peterson, whispered urgently in her ear as they took their seats at the defendant's table. The people versus Arabella. Marie Sinclair. The bailiff announced as Judge Patricia Hendricks entered. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that had seen every kind of human cruelty. District Attorney Mike Turner rose for his opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about greed, manipulation, and attempted murder. The defendant systematically starved an elderly man while stealing his money and forging insurance documents, all while researching how long it would take him to die. The evidence presentation took 2 days. Medical records showing my 47-pound weight loss, bank statements documenting the $100,000 in theft, computer forensics displaying Arabella's searches about elderly mortality rates and inheritance laws. Dr. Augustus Kane testified about my condition when Sela brought me to the hospital. In 30 years of practice, I've rarely seen such severe malnutrition in someone with adequate financial resources. This was systematic deprivation. Penelope Ravencroft walked the jury through the financial analysis, showing luxury purchases made with my pension money while I was rationing food. The defendant spent $4,000 on a single handbag while Mr. Sinclair was eating crackers for dinner. But the most devastating testimony came from my own son. Tristan took the witness stand looking like he'd aged years in months. His voice cracked as he spoke. I saw my father getting thinner, saw the house getting colder, saw the empty refrigerator. My wife told me he was just being stubborn, refusing to eat properly. I wanted to believe her because believing her was easier than facing what was really happening. Did you know about the insurance policy? The prosecutor asked. No, I found out the same day as everyone else. When I saw my father's forged signature, when I realized my wife had been planning his death, He broke down completely. I failed him. I failed my own father. Arabella's defense tried to paint her as a concerned daughter-in-law, overwhelmed by caregiving responsibilities. They claimed the searches were innocent research. The financial management was necessary. The insurance policy was for my protection. Judge Hendricks wasn't buying it. Mr. Peterson, she said during closing arguments, your client researched how long starvation takes to kill an elderly person, while systematically denying that person food. She forged insurance documents worth $750,000 while spending his money on luxury items. This constitutes attempted murder through systematic neglect. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts, the foreman announced. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, insurance fraud, and attempted murder. Judge Hendricks showed no mercy during sentencing. Mr. Sinclair trusted you with his care, and you betrayed that trust in the most heinous way possible. 8 years in state prison. $750,000 in restitution. This sentence cannot be reduced or suspended. Arabella finally broke down as the bailiff approached with handcuffs. Please, she sobbed. I never meant for it to go this far. I just needed the money. Please. You researched my death timeline, I said quietly, speaking to her for the first time since the confrontation. You calculated how long I'd live. You were waiting for me to die. As I watched Arabella being led away in handcuffs, I expected to feel satisfaction. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Guilt. In the months that followed, this feeling only grew stronger. The guilt was eating at me. Everyone said I should feel vindicated, but something felt wrong. Dad Yuan Salah kept telling me as we sat in her living room where I'd been staying since the trial. Arabella got what she deserved. Justice was served. But justice didn't explain why I woke up every morning with a knot in my stomach. It didn't explain why watching her led away in handcuffs had felt less like victory and more like recognition. I'd gained back 20 pounds since moving in with Sela. My cheeks had color again, my clothes fit properly. By all measures, I should have been grateful, relieved, ready to move forward. Instead, I found myself staring out windows for hours, lost in thoughts I couldn't quite grasp. You're processing trauma, the therapist Sela had found explained during one of our sessions. What happened to you was severe abuse. These feelings are normal. But they didn't feel normal. They felt familiar. The déjà vu started small. Walking past Salah's kitchen, I'd suddenly smell coffee and hear voices from another time. Watching her pay bills at her dining table, I'd see different hands, different papers, different faces. The present kept bleeding into memories I couldn't quite access. One evening, Salah was showing me photos on her laptop. Pictures from her time in Europe, trying to fill in the 3 years we'd lost. A photo of her in a cafe in Prague made me freeze. You look like your Aunt Margaret in that one, I said without thinking. Selah looked confused. Dad, I don't have an Aunt Margaret. The words had come from somewhere deep, automatic, and certain. But she was right. My sister had been named Patricia, not Margaret. Patricia had died in a car accident when Selah was 10. So who was Margaret? The fragments started coming more frequently after that. Sitting in Salah's garden, I'd suddenly remember a different garden, different flowers, a woman's voice calling, Holden dinner's ready. But it wasn't my wife's voice. It wasn't anyone I could place. During a grocery trip with Selah, I found myself in the cereal aisle, staring at boxes of cornflakes, overwhelmed by a memory of someone else's hands, someone else's cart, someone else's desperate calculations about making food last until the next pension check. Dad, Salah's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you okay? I wasn't okay. The memories were getting stronger, more vivid, more disturbing. I remembered being 42 years old, standing in a kitchen that wasn't mine, arguing with a woman about money. I remembered feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, justified in my anger. But the details were wrong. In these memories, I wasn't the victim. I wasn't the one being starved, being controlled, being systematically destroyed. In these memories, I need to go home, I told Salah that night. You are home, Dad. You're staying here with me. No, I said the words coming from a place I didn't understand. I need to go to Sunset Manor. Selah looked stricken. Dad, that's a nursing home. You don't need... I live there, I said quietly, the certainty settling over me like a shroud. I've always lived there. The memories became clearer each day, until finally sitting alone in my room at Sunset Manor Care Facility, I remembered the horrible truth about who I really am. I need to tell you the truth. I'm not living with Selah. I haven't seen my daughter in 3 years. I'm sitting in room 247 at Sunset Manor Care Facility in Portland, Oregon. I've been here 18 months. Through my window, I see visitors coming to see their elderly relatives. No one visits me. Salah never existed. My daughter's name was Margaret, and she died in a car accident 35 years ago at 22. She never went to Europe. She never saved anyone. The story I told you about the loving daughter rescuing her father, that was the story I wished had happened. That was my guilt, creating a fantasy to cope with what I actually did. 30 years ago, I was the son. I was Tristan. My father, Harold, was 72 when my wife, Linda, and I moved in to care for him. He received $2,800 monthly. Linda convinced me he was becoming senile, couldn't manage finances, needed our help. We controlled every dollar. We took his car keys. We isolated him from friends. We fed him scraps while we ate well. We kept the house cold to save money we spent on ourselves. I watched my father waste away from 165 to 118 pounds. I watched him wear 3 sweaters indoors because we wouldn't pay for heat. I watched him ration crackers while Linda bought expensive clothes with his money. When my sister Margaret came home from college and tried to intervene, I sided with my wife. I told Margaret she was being dramatic. I said Dad was fine, just aging. I chose my wife's lies over my father's life because believing lies was easier. Margaret died 3 months later, driving home from a lawyer's office where she'd been seeking help for Dad. She never got the chance to save him. My father died 6 months after that. Officially pneumonia, but really from systematic neglect, from starvation, from a broken heart. Linda inherited everything through a forged will. We moved to California with his money and never spoke of him again. Now, 30 years later, my son David does to me exactly what I did to my father. He controls my pension. He keeps me isolated here. He visits monthly to sign papers and collect checks. His wife Jessica researches life insurance and inheritance laws just like Linda did. The cycle continues. I told you this story because I see it everywhere. Adult children who convince themselves they're helping while stealing. Spouses who justify abuse as management. Families who choose convenience over conscience. I was never the victim. I was the perpetrator. The guilt I felt watching Arabella go to prison wasn't sympathy. It was recognition. I saw myself in her because I had been her. What goes around comes around. I'm telling this story not for sympathy, but as a warning. The cycle of abuse continues until someone chooses to break it. My father's dead. My sister's dead. My son learned from my example. I am exactly where I deserve to be. But maybe if you're listening to this, you can choose differently. You can be the one who breaks the cycle. You can choose love over greed, truth over convenience, protection over profit. It's never too late to ask for forgiveness and change, but it's also never too early to choose what's right. I've carried this burden for 30 years, and God knows I deserve every sleepless night. This true story isn't one of those heartwarming grandpa stories you usually hear. It's a confession, a warning, and hopefully a wake-up call. Don't be like me. Don't choose greed over love. Don't let pride blind you to the suffering you're causing. When God places elderly parents in your care, it's a sacred trust, not an opportunity for profit. I violated that trust, and I've spent 3 decades paying the price. The lesson from my life is simple but brutal. What you do to others will be done to you. The abuse I inflicted on my father came back to me through my own son. God's justice is perfect, even when it takes 30 years to arrive. But here's what I want you to understand from this true story. You still have a choice. Unlike the fictional grandpa stories that end with happy reunions, real life gives you chances to change course before it's too late. Choose compassion over convenience. Choose your parents' dignity over your financial gain. If my story sounds familiar, if you recognize yourself in my words, there's still time. God forgives, families can heal, and cycles can be broken, but only if you act now while your parents are still alive to receive your love instead of your neglect. If this story moved you or made you think about your own family relationships, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like and subscribe to our channel for more real stories that matter. Tell me in the comments, what would you do differently after hearing this?